Okay, cool. So my name's Austin Haddocks. Thank you for everyone for showing up. We're going to be going over game analysis, what it is, and what are some important tools and tips for it. Who am I? I'm Austin Haddocks. I'm one of the lead strategy and scouting mentors, and I'm also a mechanical mentor on 1678. Outside of robotics, I'm the head of data analysis and contract management for Solano Family Children's Services. So this is right up my wheelhouse, both in robotics and professionally. This is going to be my 12th year in FRC, and I've been with 1678 since 2019. So just kind of a general overview of what we'll be covering. We're going to be covering what are the different types of analysis that we can apply to FRC, and how do they differ? How can we understand a game? What are different kinds of scoring systems we see in FRC? And then what are kind of the benchmarks that we can use, and what are the goals that we should be going after during kickoff and throughout the competition season? It's still going? Okay. Cool. So the purpose of game analysis. So here we have a few different teams here. How many of you guys have a specific portion of your season, normally at the beginning, is just analyzing the game, breaking it down so that you can, better understand, what you need to do? Yeah? Okay, so I see a lot of so-sos, but breaking down a game so that you can better understand how it's going to be played, what are the specific tasks that you need to accomplish, and what is the hierarchy of importance between those tasks, match strategy, going into a competition, knowing what your general strategies are for playing with different types of robots is invaluable. And then also throughout the season, updating your goals for in expectations for your robot, your team, your drivers, and what you can expect throughout a competition. So there's two main types of analysis that I like to go off of. And there's holistic analysis, which is just kind of using general FRC knowledge and experience to evaluate a game. You'll see a lot of people talk about this game is similar to this one, and so we can apply to different strategies that are similar or similar designs based off of previous games. And so knowing how a previous game played out, you can apply that. On the other side, there's numerical analysis, where you're bringing a game strictly to numbers, and how much is this action worth? How long is it going to take me? So that you can better understand the trade-offs within a specific game, and at what point is it worth it objectively, or close to do a certain action over another. So in understanding a game, there's kind of four big things. What are the ways that we can score? What is the type of scoring system that this game follows? We need to read the rules and understand the specifics of allowed strategies and how the game is played in terms of the flow of a match, or the nature of ranking points, how seeding works, that kind of stuff. So I've already covered this before, but golden rule number one is learn about previous games. Knowing FRC history is probably the most important thing when preparing for kickoff, in my opinion, just because it's going to help you in terms of design. It's going to help you understand the game. It's going to help you know what kind of things are similar and what kind of things differ. allows you to not waste time figuring these things out for the first time because you already know, you know, you already know what was successful in the past. And as I think most of us know, FRC is pretty repetitive in the types of challenges or the types of scoring tasks that we have to accomplish. And so knowing previous games just makes all of this process a lot easier. So this slide has a lot of information, but the different ways that we can score in Auto and Teleop, there's single element scoring, so a really good example. Oh, I accidentally mixed these up, but this last year we scored one element at a time. Oh, there we go. We score one element at a time, where in 2022 we had multiple game pieces that we'd pick up, right? You could score 2 balls at a time, and these kind of differ in the way that you would, your strategy approaches them, and we'll get into that in a little bit. There's continuous cumulative scoring, so what that means is every single time that I score, I'm getting a certain amount of points for every game piece that I score in that method, and I can score as many as I want. There's no sort of cap. There's threshold achievement scoring. For the most part, that nowadays is for ranking points. Once you score, I think it was like 20 balls in 2022, you got a ranking point, or if you got a certain amount of endgame points now is really common for, just take a seat. For endgame points, if you hit a certain threshold, you get a ranking point. We don't really see a lot of thresholds in terms of giving out points anymore. And then in 2018, I really hope this never comes back, but it's important to bring up just in case, which is possession time. So you get a certain amount of points for every second that you had the scale tipped in your favor, or, you know, you get, I'm imagining a future game, you get a certain amount of points for every second that the ball is on your side of the court or whatever. I really hope this never comes back, but we'll cover how that kind of differs in a little bit. And then there's different types of scoring limits. So there's uncapped, right? There's continuous scoring, where you can score as many game pieces as you want, as long as time permits. And then there's capped scoring, where there's a specific number of, max number of game pieces that can be scored. So before was it supercharged nodes this year, there was a max score that could be accomplished because there was a certain number of game piece, or a certain number of nodes that could have a game piece in it, right? So these kind of differ in the way that we approach kind of some strategy with it. So in terms of endgame, there's some like single task or dual task, in the sense that in previous years you would like hang on a bar, or you could like park down below. You can feel free to take a seat. And so you can hang on a bar or park down below, and if you hung on the bar, it would be worth more points. If you were just parked, it would be worth a little less. There's staged tasks where there's different tiers of climbing. So a really good example would be in 2022, there were different level of hanging bars that took an increasing level of difficulty to accomplish. So you could go the easier route, you know, spend less resources, have a simpler climber, and you got the mid bar, and you got, you know, I think it was 6 points or something like that. Or you could, you know, spend a lot more resources, create a more technical climber to get that highest goal, and get like the traversal bar that year, which was 15 points. There's assisted tasks, and what that means is that you could do some sort of buddy climb where a person climbs and another robot with that would drive onto some sort of ramp, or a robot would grab another robot, and then they would climb, and so technically both of you guys are climbed because the rules are defined by your bumpers need to be higher than a certain limit, rather than you have to be fully supported by the thing. You can be transitively supported is the specific wording that allows for buddy climbs. In 2011, they had ordinal ranking endgames. So what that means, ordinal is like first, second, third, fourth. And so if you were the first person to accomplish the endgame task, you got a certain amount of points. And then if you were second, you got less points. Third and fourth, you got even less points. And then there's some games, I doubt that we're going to see any games moving forward that don't have an end game. But in 2014, 2015, they didn't. So that might come back. And then in terms of ranking, we used to see it be wins, loss, ties as your record for seeding. And then 2015, we had a qualification score. So your average qual score was your main seeding. And now we have ranking points, where we have ranking points for tasks within the game, and then you also get ranking points for winning or tying a match. So in terms of scoring systems, we talked about the different tasks that can be accomplished through scoring. It's still going? Okay. But in terms of linear scoring, I think most of us can understand this one. This is the simplest one, where I score a game piece, I get 5 points. If I score 10 of them, I get 50 points. And so if we have only one single scoring opportunity, so every time that I have a cycle, I can only hold one game piece, we really need to focus on scoring efficiently, because any time that you drop a score, or any time that you miss an opportunity, or your game piece falls out, that's just a wasted cycle, and you have to go back and try again. If you have multiple scoring opportunities, so like if you can shoot multiple balls per cycle, or you're able to hold multiple game pieces and score them at one time, you want to focus on carrying the max capacity possible. I see every year that we have a game that can hold, that there's multiple game pieces that can be scored, and there's teams that their plan is to only hold like 1 or 2 of the game pieces, and there's like 5 that can be held at once. And you're just wasting time, because going to score and the action of scoring normally is the longest time that takes in your cycle. And so you want to make sure that you're always capable of carrying the max capacity possible, and focus on your accuracy when you're scoring. So with nonlinear scoring, this is when things become a little less intuitive. So there's step scoring, which is, if anyone knows kind of a step graph, it's a system that essentially I have to score a certain amount of game pieces to get points. And so what I mean by that, so a really good example was in 2017, we had to score gears, and if you scored, let's say, I think it was like, it was increasing in difficulty, but let's say you scored 5 gears, you'd get 30 points. Then you have to score another 5 gears to get another 30 points. And so in terms of like step scoring, it's really important to focus as to whether it's worth it to make it to that next step, or worth it to focus on another task instead. So if you don't have enough time to make it to that next step of points, you're just wasting your time scoring game pieces, hoping that someone else scores enough to reach that next threshold. Another part of this is threshold, where if you score X amount of points, then X number of game pieces or more, you get a certain amount of points. So a really good example for that in our games now are just ranking points. If you score a certain amount of the charging station points this year, then you get a ranking point. In 2020, you had that if you scored a certain amount of balls, then you could get the stage 1, and then you had to score another set of balls to get the stage 2 bonus, and so on. And so that's another example. But with both of those, it's much more of a trade-off with the linear scoring, because you can always do one more cycle with linear scoring, but you can't necessarily just do one more cycle and get points for it with nonlinear. So with nonlinear scoring, there's also dependent scoring. So that's a system that only grants points once something else is accomplished. So that's kind of independent from scoring. So like a good example this year would be if you scored a link, right? If you scored 3 game pieces consecutively, you got a bonus, right? And so that's an additive bonus that you get based on some other task. In 2015, we saw a multiplicative bonus where if you scored a stack, you got a certain amount of points, but if you put a can on top of it, you got 3 times the amount of points instead. And so, depending as to what the type of bonus is, the focus here should be on what percentage of the max score that you could possibly get for a cycle is granted from this. And if it's worth it to spend the extra resources to design something that can accomplish that, or if it's worth it in a match to waste the time to get that. A really good example, in 2014, they did assists on every cycle, and part of that, part of each cycle, you got extra points if you shared the ball with another robot. And so you ended up realizing that those additive points ended up being worth like 40 out of 60 points. And so it was worth it to just score in the low goal and not worry about trying to catch the ball or anything, because most of your points were coming from sharing the ball. And if you didn't share the ball, you left a lot of points on the table. So trying to figure out ways to effectively and efficiently share the ball that year was like the key to success. So in terms of max score versus unlimited scoring, so obviously max score, there's a max number of game pieces or scoring opportunities. So a really good example is 2023, where we had a max number of nodes that we could score on. There were 27 places we could score. And so the strategy should be, I need to score every single spot possible, because if my opponent misses one, then I objectively win. There's no other strategy that can beat me if I'm scoring at every opportunity. And so all you have to do is stop them from scoring once if you know that you can score the max. And then there's other games where there's a max total between the 2 alliances. And so 2015 and 2018 are really good examples of that, where there's a certain number of points that are available on the field. So in 2018, there's only so many seconds in a match, and so you got a certain amount of points if the scale was tipped in your favor and your opponent wasn't getting any points. And so all you have to do is make sure that you get 51% of the points possible, or technically just above 50% of the points possible, and then you guarantee that you win that match. In other situations, you know that you might know that your opponents are going to miss some points due to auto or something, and then that just brings that threshold even more in your favor. And vice versa, in games like that, you don't want to leave any points on the table because a match is just net between you and your the other alliance. So whoever has more points wins, and if you're leaving more points on the table, that means that they have to score less points to beat you. And if there's a certain amount of points available, then if they score every game piece and they beat you in auto, then they win. And then there's unlimited scoring, where we just more like in 2022, where we just score as many balls as we can, and the game objects get recirculated back into the field, and so the focus there should be either optimizing your score by either scoring more per cycle or doing more cycles. This is a multiplicative relationship, and so if one of them's really high and one of them's really low, you're getting a lot less benefit from increasing the one that's already high than the one that's already low. And so let's say you could put in some effort to score faster cycles, but you're already kind of capped out at that, but your accuracy is pretty low. You are much better served by possibly redesigning your shooter, or maybe tuning your control loops to be more accurate, because it's much harder to increase cycles by 2, but it might be easier to double your accuracy. And so just some years, we've already talked about some years that focused on those, but linear scoring is by far the most popular, with the exception of kind of thresholds for ranking points. And they're kind of the most intuitive, but nonlinear, I think it's really important to look at some of these games. 2017, I think, is a really good example of nonlinear scoring and how that affects match strategy, and whether it's worth it to specialize into one game piece or whether it's better to be a jack of all trades. And so I think looking back at 2017 and seeing the kind of decisions that teams made that year is very useful in terms of applying that to future years. And then max score, we've seen different sorts of max scores in recent years. 18, 19, and 23 are the most recent examples of that. And so I'm not sure if this is a thing that they want to move forward. I know a lot of people love this game, and so I think the GDC will probably try to continue with this kind of scoring to be more common in the future. So looking forward, or kind of being aware of that, if some sort of max score and how you approach a game for that in the future will be useful. So kickoff is kind of the most important weekend of the season, and so how can we get the most out of kickoff? So the tools that you have during kickoff are, you have the game animation, and now you have also the field videos also. You have the rules, you have the analysis that you guys do, and then the discussion that you guys have. The game animation shows the actions being played by robots, and I know that they're not robots that you'll ever see actually play the game, but seeing the kind of movement that at least first is expecting from it is very useful for understanding kind of how a game is going to be played. Reading the rules obviously is the most important bullet here, where if you don't understand the rules, you're not going to understand the game, and you're not going to be able to properly analyze nor discuss what you should do. The analysis, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but this is where you figure out what trade-offs you are worth it to you, and what your robot should accomplish, and what you expect your robot to be able to score. And then discussion, obviously, every team kind of collectively discusses what they should be doing, and so making sure that the discussion is, detail oriented and on track, it will definitely make the most out of your kickoff. I've already talked about this a little bit, but golden rule number 2, read the game manual. The most important, at least from a game analysis standpoint, the sections that are necessary for you to know front and back are the arena. So what is the field like? Match play, sometimes they call it gameplay, something like that, where they describe the flow of a match and at what point, at what times certain things are available, such as end game and stuff like that. Scoring, this is probably the most important for us, because it gives the point values of all of the actions that you can do in a match, and it also has a table that lists all of the actions that give points. Rule violations, so this is a little bit more applicable to later on, but when you're analyzing a match and applying what you should do, it's not worth it to suggest a strategy or a robot that's against the rules, right? So yeah, and then there's just the game rules overall. There's like the robot rules, and then there's the like gameplay rules. And so golden rule number 3, this is spreadsheets. Using spreadsheets to analyze scoring, especially during kickoff, gives an invaluable tool to quickly test different scoring combinations, to see what's going to be worth the most amount of points. If you think a task isn't going to be done by a lot of robots, is it worth it? Is the points worth it to build that, to go for that big climber, versus go for a more simple climber, but then it allows you to focus more on scoring the actual game piece, right? 2022, there were a lot of teams that didn't have a traversal climb because it was worth it to them to score game pieces during that time and then get a mid or a high instead, versus having to spend the time going early and the resources to build a traversal climb. And so in terms of spreadsheets, the most useful tool, at least in my mind when it comes to this, is a scoring calculator. So all it is you just input data per robot, what you imagine, they scored this many game pieces, or they scored, they did this in auto, they did this level in endgame, and it should be able to calculate the points and ranking points of in that match, and just test different combinations to see, how the scoring kind of interacts with each other, especially if it's kind of a non-linear scoring game where there's some sort of non-linear and linear action with it. Is it worth it to score something? Is it worth the trade-off to score on the non-linear scoring game piece? And so I just kind of included an example of our 2022 scoring calculator. And so it has 1 robot, or 3 robots per alliance, and all of these up to total score are all inputs. and it will calculate the total score for that robot, the alliance. It'll show whether they get the ranking point and whether they win. And this is very useful later in the season when you are debating different strategies and match strategies and deciding which one is worth it. A really good example this year would be there were a lot of top teams that decided to do a lot of cube running because it was worth it to them to not score on the high, and they could get the number of game pieces enough for the ranking point to score in the low goals instead, because they didn't have to waste time lining up and extending out for the high goal. And so is it worth it from a points perspective or just a ranking point perspective? Well, you can test this and see if we're against an alliance that's scoring this many game pieces, can we still win if we're scoring the low goal versus the high goal? And I can say when I'm doing our driver practice in our shop, we're scoring this many more game pieces in the low than the high. Well, you can just type this in and it'll tell you if you win the match or not. And so being able to test different strategies and different scoring options is just such a useful tool for deciding what direction your season needs to go. And so golden rule number 4, understanding cycles. So by a cycle, I mean the time that it takes either from scoring a game piece, picking one up and scoring it again, or vice versa, picking up a game piece, scoring it, and then picking up another game piece. And so Karthik's old rule was 2-4-8. So a low robot would score 2 game pieces in a match. Mid robot would score 4, and a top robot would score 8 would score 8 game pieces in a match. And this was under ideal conditions. With Falcons and Swerve being so prevalent now, that really isn't the case anymore. My kind of personal rule of thumb now is 2-6-14. So a low team is probably still going to score around 2 game pieces. A mid team might score 6, and this is at the end of the season under perfect conditions, so no defense, arguably no other robots on the field, and a top team might score 14. This year, the most that a robot ever scored was 13. The year before, 2022, I think a team scored 17 cycles, and those weren't full cycles. Those were half cycles, grabbing the balls that are near you, and so there's obviously some play in these numbers, but under perfect conditions, a top team's not scoring more than 14 game pieces. A mid team scoring about 6 to 8 is pretty common now, and a lower team scoring 2 to 6, that range is pretty reasonable. So heading into the season, what are some what should be our checklists for what we're doing during the season? Well, we should be looking at competitions, we should be scouting competitions, and then doing outside analysis and data visualization. So watching competitions, golden rule number 5, that's probably the most important thing to do during the competition season, is to watch other matches and watch other competitions, especially during weeks that you don't have a competition, that you're not competing, because it's the perfect time. There's other people who are playing. The game evolves throughout the season, and so watching the game being played and watching the strategies that other teams have come up with might be clever, and you might apply it. It also allows you to evaluate how well you're doing against other teams of comparable level, or if your goal is to be at a certain level, well, what are robots at that level doing? Are you doing better than them, worse than them? And so that can help you figure out where you are in your season and where you need to be. And then also it helps find unique autos strategies and what are the most effective ways to play defense. This year, starting week 1, there were a lot of people that had 2 offensive bots and 1 defender. At the end, no one had a defense bot unless they broke. And so seeing that evolve and seeing how effective that could be is just a really useful tool. Scouting. I'm sure most of the teams here already have a scouting system in place at their own competitions, but collecting data on every robot in every match not only helps with match strategy, but it also helps with your pick list if you are in the situation where you will be a captain. But also it allows you to keep that data to analyze it after the competition to see maybe there's something that you missed. And it could be about your pick list. There was a robot that you had very low. Different alliance picked them and they killed it in elims. What was kind of the factor that you should have looked at to catch that robot? Or maybe just analyzing the trends of how the season is evolving, and are teams scoring more or less than they used to, or are we starting to hit kind of a threshold of this is the max that a robot's going to be able to score. What can we expect coming into our competition? We can do some pre-scouting of other competitions, and so reviewing your scouting data, like I said, for both your competition and also look at other competitions. We'll talk about some different resources that you can use to analyze other competitions, but looking at the trends across weeks and, very important, other regions if you're possibly competing at champs. What are the strategies that different regions have come up with, and how do they differ, and how does that change match score? There are some areas that play very heavy defense. There are some areas that play literally no defense. And so does that change how the match, how a match plays out? And then it also allows you to just adjust your expectations for both your team and also for what your goals should be moving forward. So golden rule number 6, the Sykes database and StatBotics, they collect TBA data on every robot at every competition. It's a great resource for pre-scouting and evaluating your opponents, especially if they have already competed that season. And it allows you to kind of create some match strategies coming into a competition without having to have scouting data on those teams. Also, it updates for every week, and so StatBotics updates live, I believe, now. So being able to analyze like the latest week's robots and seeing how those robots change is a very useful tool. So when it comes to data visualization, there's different kinds of ways to visualize data and make it easier to wrap your head around some numbers. You can calculate a number, but it's hard to give context, whether that number's high or low, without kind of comparing it. And so a really easy way to compare teams is to put them in graphs and say this one's higher, this one's further right on the graph, or something like that. And so graphs, charts, tables, and some dashboards are always a good resource when trying to either holistically or use data analytics to analyze other robots. And so some useful tools. Tableau, every team gets Tableau licenses in the virtual kit of parts. And then Microsoft BI is free. They are data visualization software, so the only thing you can do in it for the most part is create graphs, charts, and dashboards. Excel and Google Sheets are spreadsheet software where you can create tables. They also have great graphing features in it, and so being able to create graphs in those are very useful. This is in 2022, Team 1918, the NC Gears, made this dashboard using the Caleb Sykes database, and so this just from just kind of an overall standpoint, you can just get a general overview of a game and the robots that you want to look at. And so this top graph here, it has total auto points plus end game points as the y-axis, and then total tele points is the x-axis. And so if this is on 1678, what we always say is top right corner is the goal to be, right? Because if you're at the top right corner, you're at the top of tele points, and you're at the top of auto and end game. And so, but we can also use this to see there's a pretty good threshold that a lot of these top teams are scoring in auto and end game, which makes sense because there's only a specific amount of tasks you can do in auto and end game, but also the packedness of different teams, scoring more than 30 tele points is a lot less. And then down below, it was the total contribution, so the total amount of points that each team scored in a match. And it has this, I didn't filter for anyone specifically, but they have the ability to filter by event type, so regional or district, your country, state, your specific district, or if you want for a specific week. And they added one that was if that team was on Einstein or not. And so being able to just kind of create a visualization that you can just get a snapshot of a team's ability makes it so that you don't need to necessarily, you might not need to watch match video. You know what they can do because you've seen the data, you've seen the numbers, and you know what they're going to be doing in a match. So just to summarize overall, the types of analysis that we see in FRC are holistic, where we're using our FRC knowledge and experience, and numerical or data analysis, where we bring things to, we bring the game down to the point values and how much we're scoring, and we use data analysis to calculate what we can expect from different teams. Understanding a game, reading the rules is by far the most important thing. If you don't understand the game, then you're not going to be able to analyze it. Scoring systems, we have linear and nonlinear scoring, and then we have max or capped and not capped games, where there's a max number of game pieces that can be scored or max amount of points that can be accomplished, or there's games that just score as much as you can. During kickoff, really the goal should be to efficiently and quickly understand the game using the rules, your own analysis, the discussion, and the game animation, and to decide what you want to accomplish, and then during the competition season, you should be watching other competitions and seeing how that trend continues, and don't hesitate to use the available databases that are out there for us to use for free. And so obviously the go-to resources are for like learning about data analysis and stuff are Chief Delphi, the Blue Alliance, and Statbotics. And then this is my contact information in case you guys have any questions and you guys need some help. I'd be happy to discuss this more with you guys. But yeah, any questions? And this is a QR code to give any feedback on fall workshops. Any questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much.